13th meeting of the Seclusion Working Group, and a quorum is present. Our first order of business today will be the approval of the previous meeting minutes. And has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes from our prior meeting in August? If so, I would entertain a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes. All right, moved by Representative Sensimura. Any discussion on the previous meeting minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, motion carries. The minutes are approved. We have a few members who were not present at our first meeting, and I'd like them to introduce themselves to us. Last time, we all went around and talked about, gave an introduction of who we were and what brought us to this, what our backgrounds are and what brought us to the working group here today. I have Heather Halstead, Fatima Molas, and Jamie Harthan, who are now, I think, with us today, who were not here before. Ms. Halstead, if you're here, I would invite you to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and introduce yourself to the working group.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I have been working in school districts since 2019 in many different capacities, but where it stuck and where I love to be is in EBD and special education classrooms. That's why I'm part of this group as part of the union. I am, or not as part of the union, but I work in the St. Michael Albertville School District and have since 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Halstead. What do you do for the St. Michael's Albertville School District?
So I have my job title right now. I have 3 different job titles. I do administrative assistant for our alternative high school and our online program. And I also work as a response para and planning room para to help kids process through behaviors or situations that are making being in school and functioning difficult.
All right, thank you. We're happy to have you. Next, Fatima Molas, if you could unmute yourself, turn on your mic, and introduce yourself to the working group.
Good afternoon. I apologize. I have laryngitis. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you just fine, thank you.
Yes, I'm Fatima Molas. I'm a mother of 2 special needs children, both autistic, one has physical disability. I'm also the co-founder of Multicultural Autism Action Network. I'm a community advocate, and I joined this committee because I care about the work that's impacting our community, and especially my son, who has a high behavioral needs and high support needs. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Molas. How old is your son?
My son is 13 years old.
Thank you. We're happy to have you as a part of the working group.
Thank
and
you.
Finally, Jamie Harthan, if you could please unmute yourself, turn on your mic, and introduce yourself to the working group. All right, Jamie Harthan, if you're here, can you please unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and introduce yourself to the working group? All right, we'll come back. We have a few presentations today, hopefully to tee up the issue of what seclusion is and what seclusion isn't, and some of the work that's happened in the past on this issue. And the first presentation we're going to see is from the Minnesota Department of Education. We have Darren Corty. Can you help me with your last name?
Yeah, Cordy, Madam Chair.
Cordy, thank you. Who's the Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Student Support Services. And Mr. Cordy, I'm happy to turn things over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the work group. My name is Darren Cordy. I'm an Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Student Support Services at the Minnesota Department of Education. Here to present to you some data that we have. Oh, I'm sorry. You go right ahead. Thank you. So I will jump to our agenda to go through what we're going to be talking about today, which is just talking generally, give a little background on history and context around seclusion and restrictive procedures in the state of Minnesota, sharing some data that we have for about the last 10 years, and then talking about the findings from prior work groups that we've had on this issue. So first of all, just making sure that we are working off a shared set of common knowledge. Wanted to share some definitions that we use when it comes to some of the language that we'll be talking about today. So these definitions are taken from the MDE website, but they are kind of a plain language version of what you would find in statute in Minnesota Statute 125A. 0941. So these aren't kind of word for word from the statutes, but more of a plain language version, user friendly. So when we talk about restrictive procedures generally, we talk about physical holding or seclusion of children with disabilities in an emergency in Minnesota schools. So there's also a caveat in that definition that restrictive procedures cannot be used to punish or discipline a child. The term emergency, as you can see they're used in restrictive procedures, has a further definition, just meaning where immediate intervention is necessary to prevent a child or an individual from physical injury. So we'll talk a little bit in a second then of kind of what would not constitute an emergency in some of these situations, what wouldn't be considered a restrictive procedure. For the purposes of this group, seclusion, we're talking about seclusion, we mean when a child is confined alone in a room and is prevented from leaving. So that could look like a room with a locked door. It could be a child in a room with an unlocked door and somebody is, holding the door closed, but just where the child is not allowed to leave the room. This does not include a situation necessarily where a child would be removed from an activity. Say they were working on something in a group in their classroom and were removed from that group and kind of asked to, go sit in a different part of the classroom. That would not be considered seclusion under this definition. It's really strictly just that situation where a child is in a room confined alone and is prevented from leaving. Definition.
Can I interrupt you just 1 second there?
Yes, Senator.
You spoke to two different examples, both examples containing a door. What is the MDE's interpretation of a student inside a separate room with egress barred but no door?
Yes, Madam Chair. So this is self-reported data. So to some extent, it's going to depend on how the district defines that. They are supposed to register their seclusion rooms with us, and then when we do program monitoring, we check on those. So then we would make determinations based on a case-by-case basis what that looks like. So without having kind of more information about what that looks like, I don't know that we have a standard definition other than what we have here in statute. So moving on to the definition of physical holding. So again, kind of under the restrictive procedures umbrella, we have seclusion, we have physical holding. Physical holding is a physical intervention that is needed to hold a child immobile or limit a child's movement where body contact is the only source of restraint and where immobilization is used to effectively gain control of a child in order to protect the child or another from injury. So also important in kind of thinking through that definition is what would be things that would not qualify as a physical hold. So if you were helping a child complete or respond to a task and there was physical contact involved in that, but it wasn't restraint, so that would be an example of something that's not physical holding. Assisting a child without restricting their movement, administering a health authorized related service or procedure, or physically escorting a child when the child isn't resisting or the resistance is minimal. So all of those would not be something we would consider to be physical holding. Since the fall of 2012, MDE has had a restrictive procedures work group as its primary means of consulting with interested stakeholders about restrictive procedures and the statewide use of them. There was also a legislative report that is produced as part of that work group. The group was formed to address concerns that were brought to us and to the legislature by schools and parent and family advocates around the use of restrictive procedures in schools. In 2013, there was, sorry, I'm just checking my slides here. In 2013, the legislature asked MDE to pull together interested stakeholders and develop a statewide plan for reducing the use of restrictive procedures. At the time that was passed in 2013, it had to include specific measurable implementation and outcome goals for reducing the use of restrictive procedures. Again, there's also an annual report that was involved there, which has been submitted to the legislature annually since then. The next change in that statute happened in 2016. The restrictive procedure statute was amended to add the goal of eliminating the use of seclusion as part of the legislative charge for the work group. So it was at that time that the group really started to look into strategies to not just decrease the use of seclusion, but work toward the elimination of it in schools. In the 2023 legislative session, the statute was further amended for MDE to make recommendations to the legislature for urgently ending the use of seclusion in Minnesota schools, and that's the language that was in the statute. The 2023 legislature also prohibited, effective September 1st, 2024, prohibited schools from using seclusion on children from ages birth to grade 3.
Thank you. And that I'm going to highlight that piece of legislation from 2023. I spoke about it in our last work group meeting, but I want to raise the issue again. This particular provision, the ban on seclusion and the urgent elimination, came as a surprise to a lot of us. It wasn't something that was ever debated on the floor. It wasn't something that was ever extensively debated in committee. It was an amendment that was offered in committee and was buried in one of the massive omnibus bills that was rushed through in 2023, which is what has since given rise to this particular working group so that we can have a thoughtful and more deliberative approach to this issue rather than simply ramming something through without the knowledge of the majority of the people that voted on it.
Thank you for that context, Senator. Moving on with the legislative history of the work group, the restrictive procedures work group, that is, in 2024, with input from the work group, MDE has reviewed opportunities for improved and broader strategic engagement and consultation with people with lived experience around the use of restrictive procedures. There is something called the Minnesota Olmstead Plan, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but it's something that's required, the state is required to produce under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that requires the state to have a plan for implementing its obligations for individuals with disabilities, opportunity to live and work and be served in integrated settings. So as part of that Olmstead Plan, there are goals and objectives around the use of restrictive procedures. And as the Olmstead Implementation Office is developing their new plan for the next iteration of the Olmstead Plan, we're working with them closely on this issue, including contracting with inclusion consultants who are persons in the community with disabilities who have experienced the use of restrictive procedures and are receiving services through public disability services programs. Next, we will move on to the data. So lots of data here, and I won't, go through it, line by line. But so beginning in 2016-17 is when schools began being required to report quarterly data to MDE about the individual uses of restrictive procedures, including seclusion, and then details about the individual students who have been secluded. By July 15th of each year, districts have to report that summary data to us on the use of restrictive procedures for the following, for the prior school year, so July 1st to June 30th of the prior school year. That summary data has to include information about the use of restrictive procedures, including seclusion and the use of reasonable force. Key data points that continue to show up throughout the most recent set of data that we have is kind of from 2021 to 24. We've seen a steady use of restrictive procedures with slight variations in the total amount of usage from year to year. with a slight uptick in usage in the 24-25 school year. It's worth noting that all of these years are still a pretty significant reduction in the restrictive procedures usage that we had prior to kind of those pandemic era years. So I'll show you that. There's a nice visual in the slides here in terms of a graph. In particular for seclusions, we've seen a steady decrease in the number of seclusions for students with disabilities and a significant, steady decrease in the number of students experiencing the use of seclusion. We have seen a bit of an uptick in prior years in the 21-22 school years, but again, all of those are significantly lower than reported data that we had prior to the pandemic years of 2019 and 2020. So again, just kind of for a helpful visual here, you can see the history of the use of restrictive procedures on the gray line, which is your total use of restrictive procedures, kind of the top line, and then physical holds in the middle and seclusion at the bottom. As you can see, kind of those numbers combine out to equal the total amount of restrictive procedures. And obviously you see that big dip. In the pandemic years, obviously we didn't have kids in school for the full year those years, so seclusions weren't happening. So we kind of disregard that data, look a little before that, look after that, and the trends there are helpful. As you can see, we're experiencing kind of an overall uptick in this last year on the overall use of restrictive procedures, while the use of seclusions is going down. So a little bit of an offset there in the increase of use of physical holds on the other side of that. So moving on to physical holding data. This slide shows the number of physical holds that were reported between the 2021-22 school year and the 24-25 school year. The context here, we do have numbers of total special education students. If you wanted to do the math of kind of percentages there, we don't have that on the slide, but happy to get that for you if that would be helpful. But again, I think it's helpful to see that we're seeing generally a decrease in the number of an increase in the number of total physical holds happening over time while we're seeing that decrease in seclusion. Which brings us to the seclusion data. This slide shows the total number of seclusions that happened between the 2021-22 school year and the 24-25 school year. We also, as part of this, schools are required to submit as part of this data staff injuries and student injuries. So that data is also included in these slides here, as well as districts that have reported no seclusions at all. And when we say districts there, that includes your traditional school districts, as well as charter schools, co-ops, education districts, intermediates. Also, I think helpful data on here, as well as the average length of seclusion. That's something as well that is required to be included as part of the data. Next, we'll move on to some demographic data. So what we continue to see here is some continued disproportionality in the use of seclusion and physical holds, particularly for students who identify as Black or African American, receiving the most disproportionality. Again, we have the raw data in terms of the total number of students here receiving seclusion. However, we do also have data comparing kind of on a one-to-one basis what that looks like. So for Asian American students, it's about 1 in 1,000 students in 24-25. Black African American students, it's about 4 in every 1,000 students. For Hispanic or Latino special education students, it's about 1 in 1,000. American Indian or Alaskan Natives are about 2 out of every 1,000 students experiencing seclusion. 2 or more races is about 2 in 1,000. There weren't any reported for Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, so that would be 0. And then for white students with disabilities, it was about 2 out of every 1,000 students. So again, we can get you that data since it's not on the slide. And we have that broken down by year as well. Next slide takes a look at the use of seclusion by age group. So again, we have kind of the raw numbers here. The one kind of caveat that we have with the asterisk there is that we had a legislative change that expanded the age of service for students who are kind of transition age, that 18 to 21, that was bumped up to age 22. So just be aware that as you're looking at that data, as we see that little uptick in 24, 25, and that 16 to 22 range, some of that may be attributable to those students who are being served beyond their 21st birthday, which was not something that was happening before then. Again, just looking at kind of on a per 1,000 basis on that 0 to 5 range, we've had less than 1 in 1,000, which is good because, you know, that's not supposed to be happening at all starting last school year. 6 to 10, we see 3 in 1,000 usage. From 11 to 15, it's about 3 in 1,000, and 16 to 22, 2 in 1,000. Also, I think helpful for the committee to be aware of is the differences in the use of seclusion based on the disability categories. So the highest disability categories where students are experiencing seclusion is in autism spectrum disorder and then emotional behavioral disorders. These also happens to be an area of special education where we're seeing growing enrollment of students experiencing these disabilities. So the fact that we're seeing increased enrollment and at the same time a decrease in the use of seclusion, I think speaks well to the progress that schools have made in attempting to reduce the use of seclusion among these populations, but obviously still work to do. And then a few other categorical disability areas here, just again for your reference. As you can see, pretty significantly lower than the numbers that we're seeing for ASD and then emotional behavioral disorders. And then also breaking down use of seclusion by gender, seeing pretty, much higher numbers for males versus females. Some of that is attributable to the increased prevalence in ASD among males versus females, but as well as overrepresentation of males and females in the EBD category as well. And then this slide is about federal settings. So just as a reminder, under the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, students are placed in what they call a federal setting, or settings 1 through 4. There's actually higher than 4, but we just have 1 through 4 here, and that's based on the amount of time that they spend in a regular classroom, general education classroom, with their general education peers. The higher the placement, the higher the setting, the more time that they're spending with the less time, I should say, that they're spending with their non-disabled peers. So kind of unsurprisingly in the data here, the more restrictive the setting is, the higher the need that there is for the student, and the more cases of the use of seclusion that we see, which I'm sure the following presentations will probably discuss what that looks like in on the ground a little bit more. And then I just have some of the data that we've already discussed in graph form here. So as you can see, is a kind of proportion of students experiencing seclusions versus statewide data. I'm trying to get this so it's not blocked off, but either way, you can see the seclusion data is in the green or the teal, and then the statewide special education enrollment is in purple. So you can see that based upon demographic data on this slide. And then this is that same data broken out by age, with seclusion being in green and total statewide special education enrollment in purple. So you can kind of see there where there might be some overrepresentation based on population use. Again, kind of as we talked about in the previous slides for those middle ages, 6 to 10 and 11 to 15. And then once again, seclusions by disability here, where you're seeing that significant overrepresentation of students receiving seclusions by their disability in that EBD and ASD category. And then by gender as well, too. All right, so last thing we wanted to talk about was just some of the findings that have existed from prior work groups and the restrictive procedures work group. First, as a reminder, as part of that 2023 legislation, the Department of Education and the Commissioner were tasked with providing recommendations to the legislature on how to urgently end the use of seclusion. As a result of that, the Commissioner made the recommendation to the legislature at that time to prohibit the use of seclusion on all children by September 1st of 2026. That hasn't moved forward via legislation. That was just a recommendation that was brought forward. There's also been the addition of the Restrictive Procedures Work Group has added to their recommendation, making sure that we have direct resources or funding opportunities for schools to obtain training and systemically implement evidence-based behavioral crisis prevention and or alternatives to restrictive procedures. It's kind of one of the common things that we hear in that working group is we don't want to move too quickly, too suddenly without providing the appropriate resources and options for schools. We don't want to have any unintended consequences there by moving too quickly. So I think, the Department of Education is firmly in the camp of moving toward ending seclusion, but doing so in a thoughtful and planful manner. And then also the recommendation here from prior working groups around having training for general education staff. So as a reminder, restrictive procedures can only be used under statute on students with disabilities. And so, we obviously have our staff who work with those students with disabilities really well trained up and know what they're doing there. But for our general education staff who maybe aren't working with those students on such a regular basis, making sure that they have the training that they need, as well as teacher candidates coming into the profession on positive behavioral interventions and supports for students experiencing dysregulation. These recommendations were based on the cumulative efforts that the work group has done, as well as the U.S. Department of Justice findings on seclusion and restraint, the Americans with Disabilities Integration Mandate, and IDEA's requirement that students be placed in the least restrictive setting. We also have some feedback here that I think is helpful, and I'm sure you'll hear from some of the external partners here today and throughout the rest of the work group. I won't go through and read this, but this is just, again, some of the feedback that we've heard directly from folks working on our restrictive procedures work group about this work. So wanted to share that with the group as well. And I believe that is all I have for you, but happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that presentation. In looking at a few of these slides here, first of all, comparing, we have the slides that have the data on physical holds versus seclusion. I think it's slides 6 and 7. And I'm noting, first of all, if we look just at the 2024-2025 school year, I'm noting we're looking at almost 20,000 incidents of physical holds versus 1,800 seclusions. And if we look at the injuries associated with each, we're looking at 1,711 reported staff injuries in 24-25 incident to the use of physical holds and 240 student injuries. Whereas with seclusion, we see staff injuries of 98 and student injuries of 36. What, if anything, can we conclude from this particular data, in your opinion?
Madam Chair, members of the work group, I think that it's really, that's great to point that out because physical holds are in nature, physical. It's just, as we talked about in the definitions, that it requires a physical form of restraint. So I think part of that is likely why you're seeing more injuries there. I think, not wanting to speak for advocates one way or another, but on the seclusion side, where you have a child who is placed in that room by, confined in a room, unable to leave, there may not be physical injuries that are apparent, like there might be in with the physical holds, but there may be kind of more mental and emotional injury that they sustain there that might not be reported as part of this because it's not a visible injury.
That leads me to my next question. So is there a mechanism for reporting alleged emotional or mental harm? And is it only limited to seclusion, or can physical holding also produce emotional harm, trauma, mental harm in a student?
Madam Chair, members of the work group, yeah, so this is self-reported data. So, however a district, feels to report that data to us, whether or not it's an injury is something that's a determination that's made on the local level by the folks who are doing the reporting. That being said, we do have some standards and guidance that we provide around that, which we can share with the group. There's also a mechanism by which parents can challenge some of that information and allege, if they feel that seclusion or physical holds were being done in a way that was inappropriate or not consistent with the requirements of statute, they can file a complaint with us to do that. So we have data on the complaints that are filed. And then, I'm sorry, what was the last part of your question, Madam Chair? Should have been taking notes.
Yeah, no, it had to do with the possibility that emotional harm could also stem from physical hold, in addition to seclusion, as you pointed out.
Yes, and Madam Chair, absolutely, that would be a possibility.
And going back to your statement that a parent or a caregiver could file a complaint with the MDE if they felt that a physical hold or seclusion didn't comply with statute, that's data that MDE has?
Madam Chair, yes, I believe so. We have complaint data and can aggregate that for you. I would just have to make sure that it's not individually identifiable for any student data, but we can check on that for you.
I think that would be helpful to have. And I'm also wondering if the incident goes beyond simply not complying with statutory requirements, but rises to the level of maltreatment, are those particular records, or is that particular information releasable to this working group?
Sure. Madam Chair, maltreatment data is treated quite a bit differently in terms of the level of protection that is provided there. It's only kind of when there's a case of substantiated maltreatment that is then reported back to a district or a licensing entity does it become public data. So we can certainly provide that as well too, but it's going to be more limited in scope than what we would be able to provide through the parent complaint process.
In looking at some of your final slides, in findings and, findings from prior working groups, maybe not recommendations, I do know that some of the working groups have spoken to or stressed the importance of school-linked mental health, and I don't see any reference to that. What, if any, has been done in the area of school-linked mental health?
Sure, Madam Chair. I think that would be a whole nother presentation we could provide for you around all the different things that we're doing around school-based mental health, but certainly that's a priority for the administration. The team I work with out of our special education division does a lot of work around positive behavioral interventions and supports. We have one of the longest standing and most comprehensive PBIS programs in the entire country. So again, happy to share more information on that. Our EDI center and school safety team also work very closely with districts around crisis prevention or crisis response and mitigation. So yeah, full service community schools. I'm trying to think of all the other pieces, and yeah, definitely a omission here, not intentional, of including that.
Is there any push by MDE to end the use of physical holds, the same as MDE has an interest in eliminating the use of seclusion?
Madam Chair, I would just remind folks that the mandate around eliminating the use of seclusion is part of a statutory mandate for MDE, whereas we don't have that with physical holds. But I think in an ideal world, we'd love to get to a point where we're not using physical holds. We understand that that's a much tougher lift, I think, than seclusion, as you're looking at the numbers here. So at this point, we're looking at continuing on reducing that as is part of our statutory mandate.
Are there any questions or discussion from members of the working group? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Darren, for being here. I was a participant on the Restrictive Procedures Work Group, and I appreciated that work, and we were disappointed that it ended, but I like seeing this data now, so we appreciate the work you've all been doing at MDE. I'm particularly moved by the data that demonstrates that we've had such a reduction in the number of children who've been secluded in the last 4 years. It almost looks like a 50% reduction, almost down to like 350 total children. And so my question is about the concentration of how seclusion is used. It appears to me that not every district has a registered seclusion room. There's a small number of districts that have registered seclusion rooms, and it appears that there's a small number of children who were secluded in the 2024-2025 school year. So my question is about the data that MDE analyzes and collects. Is there a way to pinpoint those districts that use seclusion more so than other districts, and how districts can learn from each other for those that have stopped using seclusion?
Madam Chair and Ms. Heiser, thank you so much for that question. It's a really great one, and it's a reminder of kind of another 2 handouts that you had that we have provided at your request, with a list of districts that have reported the use of seclusion in the 24-25 school year. So I think that can give you a sense kind of geographically how those districts are spread out. Not necessarily a surprise where there's the greater population concentration in the metro. That's where we see more of the use there. And then we also have a distribution of the LEA seclusion rooms that are either registered or were previously registered and are now inactive. So that's also by the site level there, so you can see that as well, if that is helpful. In terms of sharing kind of best practices and identifying districts that have maybe higher than average use of restrictive procedures, yes, that is part of the work that we're doing under the state Olmstead plan. In reducing the overall use of restrictive procedures is identifying those districts, having direct interventions with them, providing other options, again, kind of support, PBIS supports, other supportive mental health work that is kind of more early intervention, preventative, before they get to a point where they're in that emergency setting where they need to have the use of restrictive procedures. So we can certainly get you more information about what those goals and strategies look like as the new plan that we're working on gets developed.
Ms. Heiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a simple math question, and I was a math teacher, but I never should have been licensed to be. I'm understanding that there's about 350 students who were subjected to seclusion. I'm wondering, percentage-wise, what's our total number of students, either in the state or receiving special education? Can you break that down in a percentage for us?
Before I turn it over to you, I'm going to ask that we be mindful with our language, please. Students are not going to be subjected to seclusion in this working group. Seclusion is used on students. So I'm going to ask that we be mindful how we speak to, how we address the issue. All right, and I'll turn it over to you to answer that question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we can certainly get that data for you. I don't have our overall student enrollment here, but I can probably pull it up pretty quickly for you and get that for the group.
Anything else, Ms. Heiser?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask the same question about how many school districts total. If we're looking at the registered seclusion rooms, I'm noting about 50 different school districts, and forgive me because that was a quick count, but I'm just wondering, of our total school districts in the state, what kind of percentage would 50 of those be?
Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair, Ms. Heiser, we can definitely get that for you as well, too. I think we typically hover in like the 550 range, if I'm remembering right, for total districts, charter schools, co-ops, ed districts, intermediates, kind of all combined, but we'll get you the exact number.
Ms. Heiser, anything else?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Darren.
Okay. Ms. Abder-Holden, I believe you have a question.
Yes, thanks. So I have two questions. One is, we know that a majority of the students, where, they get into an emergency and have seclusion and restraint, is kids in the EBD category, right? Can you also share the disproportionality of the EBD category period? Because I think we have a disproportionate number, particularly of Black youth that are in that category, which then, kind of one thing leads to another, right? So do you happen to have that information today?
Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair and Ms. Abderhold, no, I don't have that with me here today, but we can definitely get that for the committee, and I think that's a astute observation that we do see significant overrepresentation of African-American students, Hispanic students, American Indian students in those same categories where we do tend to see the higher uses of seclusion as the other data provided shows. But yes, we can get that for you.
Anything
Madam
else,
Chair?
Ms. Abder-Holden?
Yes, one other thing, as I was on the working group, and we always considered if you use your body to block a child from leaving a room, that was still considered seclusion. Even though you didn't have a seclusion room, you were blocking egress. And because the statute actually says preventing the child from leaving the room under the definition of seclusion, just to the chair's earlier question, I would think that would be counted as seclusion. Thank you.
Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair, Ms. Abderhold, I think you're right. It doesn't define kind of what egress looks like. It just says when egress is barred. So if that's, being barred by a person or a door or some other physical object, I think all of those would probably qualify. Again, it's self-reported data. So to the extent that, districts are using their own definition based on our guidance, of course, then you're probably going to have a little bit of variation there. But I think that's a fair point that it could certainly take that form.
As to the guidance provided by MDE, do you offer that guidance consistent with what Ms. Abder-Holden stated, in that if a child is prevented, if a staff person uses their body to prevent a child from leaving a room, that constitutes seclusion? Is that part of the guidance that you provide to schools?
Madam Chair, I would have to check on that for you. I should have been prepared with that, but I don't have that with me today.
Ms. Hulse, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assistant Commissioner Cordy, I was also on the work group, and I do have a question for you.
Yes, please.
I know we only have 1 year of baseline data since K-3 seclusion was no longer allowed in schools, but my question is, I'm looking at slide 6, and I am looking at the fairly sizable increase in physical holding that occurred from the year 2023-24 to 2024-25. While we saw a significant decrease in seclusions, at that same time period, we saw a significant increase in physical holds. And that was a great concern of the members of the work group, myself included, because the behaviors don't go away. We just find another way to manage them. And in that time frame, we also saw a significant increase in staff injuries, and that was another great concern. And so I guess my question is, has MDE disaggregated those data and looked at whether or not that significant increase was with that K-3 group? MDE's data would suggest that most restrictive procedures occur within that 6 to 10-year-old range. And so removing that tool with 6 to 10-year-olds it seems like it may be a source of that gigantic increase. I ask also because my own district's data in intermediate 917 has shown that significant increase. Our physical holds have gone way up with that group. So I'm just curious if MDE has done that work, and that's something I would love to see statewide with those districts that are using both types of restrictive procedures.
Mr. Cordy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. That is something that is not included in our presentation today, but I think you're right, in order to get the whole picture, since we have that data for seclusion, we can definitely get that for physical holding as well, too, for all of the different categories as well. I think that would be helpful.
I believe we have an online question from Ms. Woodward.
Ms. Woodward, I think you're muted.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. Assistant Commissioner Cordy, you'll have to forgive me. A, I sound like this, but B, I don't have the slides in front of me. But I'm thinking about when you spoke to the work that the working group did and the recommendations that were made to the legislature about eliminating the urgent elimination of the use of seclusion. And there was a second bullet in there about considering providing districts with resources to support training and implementation efforts for evidence-based practices. You know, there have been some competitive grants that have come out in that regard, but there hasn't been universal distribution of resources to districts to, you know, help fill in and implement those practices like there have been in the READ Act, for example, for structured literacy. And so I'm just curious about the department's perspective around, you know, how long it takes to implement other evidence-based practices that could mitigate the use of seclusion. We haven't had the bandwidth to really do that with fidelity in the timeline that the seclusion restrictions were applied. And so has there been conversation around that tension that then that can create when that support goes away without that intentional distribution of resources and support?
Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair and Ms. Woodward, yes, we have had those conversations at MDE around, you know, what it might look like to practically implement these, you know, new direct resources, whether or not that's additional grant funding or, you know, additions to existing formulas like school safety revenue. But obviously that all gets tied up in the governor's budget process, and there's, you know, larger fiscal considerations that, you know, are at play there, of course. In terms of the, you know, time that it takes to implement things, I think that's a fair point, certainly to do implementation with fidelity on something like PBIS is a multi-year process, as you know, and is very labor intensive as well too. It requires people to, you know, step away from the classroom, step away from the school, come to trainings, come to professional development, you know, working within their group. So yeah, I think that's a fair piece. And as well, I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of that work is done with federal funds right now, that if those were to be discontinued, that would leave a pretty significant gap for the state to need to fill.
All right. Ms. Winship, did you have a question?
I just have a clarifying question. So the list of districts reporting use of seclusion, one of them listed as Intermediate District 287, and I have their restrictive procedures plan, which specifically says they do not use seclusion. Is it listed there as, even though it's part of their procedure not to, they had to, or how would that happen?
Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair, Ms. Winship, that's a great catch, because that's my understanding of how that district has been operating for some time. So I'm not sure why they're on that list, but we can look into that for you.
Before I let you go, you've also provided us with a list of Minnesota local education agency seclusion rooms, a multi-page front and back document listing school districts and the particular schools. What I notice about this, and I've seen this list before, is many of these are inactive. In fact, on the first page, there's only one whose status is registered. The rest are listed as inactive. I know I've asked for this data before, and I'm not sure why MDE would come in and give us a list of inactive rooms at schools that no longer exist. For example, with Northeast Metro 916, the ALP at Capitol View, CAP at Capitol View. Capitol View doesn't exist anymore. It was raised years ago. There's a parking lot there. So we are listing rooms, even though it says it's inactive. We're listing things, and we're providing a list of rooms at schools that don't even physically exist. in this world anymore. My question to MDE has been and is again, is there a way that you can compile a list that realistically shows the rooms that are in use in the state of Minnesota and not rooms that have been demolished as a part of raising and reconstruction of different schools? Mr. Cordy.
Sure. Madam Chair, I think that's a reasonable request that we could work on for you there. I think this was just pulled in, pulling all for the interest of the group to have all the data in front of them. But yes, to your point, if there are literally inactive or non-existent schools on this list, we should probably remove those.
Yeah, I think we should. I don't know what particular use it would have for us to consider the use of a registered or a seclusion room in a school that no longer exists. I think if we were looking at a different point in time, if we were looking back in whenever Capitol View still existed as a building in a school, then it might be useful data. But then, of course, we would have schools that didn't exist at that time. So I think it's disingenuous, and I think it's a little bit misleading to provide us a list like this to, I think, grossly overestimate the use of seclusion in Minnesota when we have many inactive schools and schools that don't even exist. So my request to you would be an updated list that accurately reflects the seclusion rooms that are in use in the state of Minnesota today. Representative Sencer-Murrah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cordy. So my question is about slide 9. And so this is breaking down students experiencing seclusion by age. And I think one thing that maybe I'm getting a little confused about is, this is by age, and the legislation that passed was a K-3 ban, right? So we know that grades don't necessarily perfectly align to age, but I'm wondering for the basically 0 to 10, right? I'm counting about 170 and 170 students experienced seclusion from age that were in the age 0 to 10 in the 2024-25 school year. So do we know why that is? If the ban was in effect, is it that those were all is it, the high end of the 10-year-old range, or is it that those were emergency situations where seclusion was used? And does that, I guess, second kind of follow-up, does that fit with what the department would think, as you're kind of phasing in a new policy? Does that, having 200 students experience seclusion, does that kind of fit with what you would expect for year one of a new policy, or does that seem like more or less than you would have expected? And is there some way that the department is communicating with schools to say this fits within the statute that was passed, or this doesn't fit within the statute that was passed, and let's figure out what to do from there? Thank you.
Before I turn it over to you, Mr. Cordy, I would point out to Representative Sencer-Murrah that seclusion can only be used in an emergency. So any use of seclusion is an emergency use. Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair, Representative Sencer-Murrah, yeah, I think that's a great point to look at there, and I will check and see if we disaggregate that data by specific year, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or if it's just reported in grade bands like this. As you can see, moving from 23, 24 to 24, 25, it pretty much, more than, went down by more than half. So I'm sure a lot of that is attributable to the ban on seclusion there. We kind of ran into this issue when the state banned prone restraint as well too a number of years ago, which is, you're not supposed to use it, but if you do use it, we still want you to report it to us so we can help you and try and figure out what led to this? How did it end up happening, even though it's not supposed to happen? So I think that's why you're seeing some of that, especially in that 0 to 5 range, those 4 that are reported there. Those are obviously situations where it shouldn't have happened, but it happened anyway. They reported it to us so that we can help provide assistance there. And my assumption is the same is happening there at 6 to 10. I just need to check on what the reporting looks like for that.
Representative Sencer-Murrah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up to that, and I think it goes a little bit, I know someone earlier was asking about kind of what resources are going out to districts to support, if people are using seclusion when the ban has gone into place? You talked a little bit about what this looks like, but can you clarify a little more? What support is the department then offering them to come into compliance with the statute or to troubleshoot? Thank you.
Mr. Cordy.
Sure, Madam Chair, Representative Sencer-Miro. So there's a number of different, programs and, I guess, programs that districts can sign up for to, receive training that the department has available. In some of these circumstances, though, like, for example, here, this would be something that, as we're doing program monitoring, which is something that we do in all of our special education programs across the state once every 6 years, that we would take a look at this. This would be something that would be a finding in the program monitoring process, and as a result of that, there would be corrective action that would be required to be taken by the district or charter school, which would then include, either all of their staff or the staff that were involved in this experience receiving specific training on restrictive procedures or whatever the situation was for those folks as well too. The same could come out of a special education complaint that a parent files. If we do find that there's a violation of law, again, there would be a corrective action which would be assigned to that, which often takes the form of training. So there's a number of different ways that schools can take advantage of that or be, asked to do additional training. It just kind of depends on the way that it comes up.
Ms. Winship, I think you had something to add here.
Just to add to what the representative said, I think state statute exists and it isn't followed often. I have an experience with my 6-year-old who's in a last year setting 3 kindergarten classroom for ASD and OHD. They suspended him for 2 days. I sent the school the statute. They said, nope, we can do it. I sent the superintendent the statute. They said, nope, we can do it. I filled out their district discipline complaint thing. That guy said, nope, we can do it. And until I finally got a hold of general counsel at MDE, who told me, no, they cannot. And I sent that to the district. And I said, I need this removed immediately. And they wrote back, okay, we will remove that suspension. So even with statute, it doesn't get followed. And there's not a follow-up. I mean, as far as I know, MDE did not do anything with the district, did not talk to the district. It was only through me telling the district that they broke the law.
Thank you, Ms. Winship. I'm sorry that happened. Ms. Sandsmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here today to share this great presentation and really give us an insight onto the numbers around seclusion. Since the ban on K-3 or birth through 3 seclusions since 2023, we've seen a large decrease in seclusions. Really happy to see that in general, just to have less kids be put through an emergency procedure like seclusion is great. But I do, I am wary of the physical procedures being increased. And because we don't have the data on the age group of those physical procedures, I'm curious if they're correlated. And my question is why we're seeing a really sharp decrease in seclusion with K through 3 being banned for the use of seclusion. I'm curious what this correlation is with younger students potentially being used more in physical holds, smaller children being put into restricted procedures like seclusion and in physical procedures. Is there a higher risk of danger with our young students? Is that why we're seeing physical restraints more apt and more seclusions with younger children? Or is there a correlation just because they're physically smaller? I'd be curious if there's any correlation data or any build out of that data.
Mr. Cordy.
Madam Chair, Ms. Sandsmark, yeah, I think that is part of what we will definitely get to you is how that same slide, number 9, is broken down for students experiencing seclusion. We'll get that for you as well for students experiencing physical holds. I'm very interested in seeing what that data looks like myself. But I think that you're probably right. The thing with physical holds is that, it can be very minimal in order to be reported as physical holds, and it can also be, very, traumatic and physical in nature. So it's kind of, it spans the whole gamut, and unfortunately, the way things are reported, there's not a lot of nuance to the data that we get. It either kind of is or is not a physical hold. So as to, you know, your question about the danger or added danger of increased physical holds for younger students, it's hard to say. You know, maybe as you have more folks coming in who are, you know, practicing in the field and you know, doing this on a more daily basis than we are, where we're getting the summary data, those might be helpful questions to ask them.
I do think, in partial response to your question, the emergency situations continue to arise. We've simply taken a tool away from our professionals to use to manage those situations. So you take one tool away, you're going to see more use of another tool. We do have another presentation to get to today. Mr. Cordy, I want to thank you for coming today, and you've given us some good information. Next, we have a presentation on the use of seclusion from independent school districts 916 and 917. I would invite them to the table, please. And on my list, we have Audrey Allery, Jenna French-Greff, Justin Holscher, Kara McGlynn, and Adrian Trzynski. Welcome. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Seclusion Work Group. Thank you for the opportunity to address this critical aspect of student support and safety. Again, I'm Justin Holscher from Intermediate 917. I've worked in federal setting 4 buildings for 15 years, holding roles including paraprofessional, licensed teacher, and currently a special education coordinator. My colleagues and I are representing a collaborative team of educational professionals dedicated to understanding and implementing responsible intervention strategies for students with complex behavioral needs. Our group has already been introduced. So I'll just move right along. Each of us brings a specialized expertise in special education, behavioral intervention, and student support services. We wouldn't be educators without a learning target, so here it is. Our presentation today will comprehensively examine the use of seclusion as a restrictive procedure within educational settings. Specifically, we intend to clarify the strict conditions under which seclusion might be considered, emphasize prevention and alternative intervention strategies, demonstrate our commitment to student dignity and safety, and outline the comprehensive protocols surrounding any potential use of seclusion. We will illustrate how responsible educational teams approach seclusion not as a first response, but as an absolute last resort in emergency situations where students or staff safety is critically at risk. Our goal is to provide transparent, evidence-based insights into our careful, compassionate approach to managing complex behavioral challenges while prioritizing student well-being and educational continuity. Pass it off next to my colleague, Kara.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for having us here today. And just a point of clarification, my name is actually Kara, so thank you for that. So as we shift into talking about our learning targets, I want to uphold something that Justin was naming explicitly around the continuum of care. If we are thinking holistically about our students, it's imperative that we think through the complex needs that they come to our districts with. So this data here is from the most recent Minnesota Student Survey, which MDE has delightfully acronymed the MSS. It has occurred through 2013, 2016, and 2019, with the most recent data being from 2022. This looks at students in grades 5, 8, 9, and 11. And the data that I'm bringing to present to you all today is to look at the complex needs of the students within our intermediate districts. For those that are familiar with the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, or the ACEs, without going too much into depth with it, I would just clearly articulate that it is looking at trauma events. And what this data says to me is that my students that I serve at Northeast Metro 916 as a school social worker for over 13 years and lead school social worker for 5, is that my students in light blue up there have much more traumatic events that they experience prior to coming to our schools than most students here in the state of Minnesota. That requires us to approach students with holistic, thoughtful intervention and care. When we look at trauma and the specifics, we're also thinking about the biological impacts of trauma on development, physically as well as brain development. An area that MDE does not offer us data on is looking at the historic intergenerational trauma and unresolved grief that many of our students, explicitly those that are in the BIPOC population, experience, as well as their families. Those historic intergenerational and unresolved grief events also are connected to communities that have been experiencing things like seclusion, restraint, but also more globally thinking about interactions with police officials at a much higher rate than other folks. I bring that to you that we will circle back to that information here in a moment. I think the other piece that I want to pull out here is that when you start to think about our complex students with very high needs, school is one of, if not the only, place that we do not refuse services for children. If you are thinking about hospitals, residential treatment centers, outpatient or inpatient therapy, behavioral incidents often result in those students no longer being able to access those services. That's not the case for school. We attempt to always welcome them back. And I believe in my district and with my teammates, we do welcome them back. This particular slide I feel is important to go to the committee's question, explicitly looking at when we utilize seclusion properly, what is an outcome. So here you will see from, again, that same 2022 Minnesota Student Survey, all the way to the right-hand side in that blue. Our students who within that continuum of care may experience seclusion and restraint still report a much higher rate of positive relationship between student and staff. This has already been addressed through MDE, so I will not spend much time here, but I just again want to highlight the complexity of our students. So these are the 13 disability categories under the Minnesota Department of Education. And when we think about students in our intermediates explicitly at 916, students in my district often have around 11% higher rate of anxiety and depression. That was also called out through that Minnesota Student Survey. Our students also experience suicidal thoughts at a rate about 10% higher than other students in the state of Minnesota. So we're working with really complex needs. With that, I will pass to my colleague.
Thank you, committee, for having us here today. My name is Audrey Allery. I have been a behavior analyst at 916 for the last 15 years. Working in our setting for programs K through 8th grade. We wanted to take some time to go through what seclusion looks like when it is used properly in alignment with state statute and best practices. The first piece of that is the prevention that we put into place and the proactive strategies. So we take a lot of time with those, including a student's behavior plan, but also classroom management practices, which we spend the majority of our time on training our staff, working with our staff, and with our students on emphasizing those pieces. Parts of those are working on the students' functional behavior assessments, which then goes into their student behavior plans, and then data as we gather throughout the school year with those individual students. If a student were to become more escalated or dysregulated, we really have trained a lot also on our de-escalation strategies. So things like verbal redirections, some sensory supports. We work closely with occupational therapists and speech language pathologists, behavior analysts, our mental health professionals. We use breaks, we use other calming strategies, and when these are exhausted, that is when staff may begin to utilize crisis intervention procedures, which often aren't the use of restrictive procedures. That is a piece of it that can be used in an emergency, but it also doesn't mean that once an emergency situation has occurred, that it automatically means a restrictive procedure is used, like restraint or seclusion. Again, the amount of training that we get once a student, or to be able to handle the crisis situations with our students, is intensive. We know, and we have trained people repeatedly and continue to train people, that an emergency is occurring only when less restrictive measures have failed or are deemed impractical. So there might be an imminent risk of harm. Factors considered here are the intensity of the aggression occurring, the duration that it's been happening, or self-injury for that matter, and or the imminent risk of harm.
So when trained staff do utilize emergency procedures, there's a lot of training that goes into it prior to them being able to use those procedures. All of our staff are trained in crisis intervention. We use a specific system for that so that they can safely and systematically use those procedures when an emergency situation occurs. We also, as a district, provide guidance on the use of restrictive procedures, so that way we have alignment across all of our programs and staff practices. Additionally, part of our onboarding training includes information around the psychological and physiological risks and impacts that restrictive procedures can have on students, so that staff are able to function with that information as well. And then the final piece of training that staff receive is on the student's individual plan. We get together as teams, we incorporate student voice, family voice, and we make decisions based on data that we have as far as what is going to be the best approach when providing services to these students and intervening when a situation does constitute an emergency. As far as determining when seclusion ends as soon as the behavior that indicated that it was an emergency situation has also ended, and less restrictive strategies can be used safely. So staff shift into de-escalation strategies or even a reintegration routine. A lot of students have a routine that they follow immediately following that crisis behavior to help them with continuing to regulate their bodies so that they can prepare to return to learning. The reintegration strategies that are used are based on the student's individual needs, and staff follow those procedures to ensure that the student is ready to return back to their classroom. The day that any instance of seclusion happens, the parent or guardian is informed, so the school makes those efforts to contact the parent the day of. And then there's always additional collaboration, whether it is an IEPT meeting that occurs because restrictive procedures are used on a regular basis. It's also family collaboration happens, per parent request as well. And then some other factors that we consider within student plans, especially when we are looking at using restrictive procedures like seclusion, include the student's trauma history, any potential contraindications, and that could be related to their trauma history or other physiological or psychological factors that the team is made aware of. We also include information from past behavior incidents, and then that ongoing collaboration with parent or guardian and student, and then input from any other assessments like the functional behavior assessment as well. And then finally, we do want to point out when seclusion is used well, it also provides teams with an alternative to other emergency interventions, such as physical holding and restraint and EMT or police intervention.
Hello, thanks for having us. My name is Adrienne Trzynski. I'm a behavior analyst working for 917 for the last 12 years. And my colleague Justin and I are addressing the question, what does an emergency situation where seclusion is used look like?
Can I ask you to step a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
I feel like I'm going to be sitting in his lap in a second, so I'm sorry. So we're going to do our best just to give you an idea of what a situation like this might look like, understanding that every single scenario is different. But when our students go into crisis, it can look like any number of things, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide. We wanted to make sure that we demonstrate this visually to understand what my colleague said before. the majority of our intervention attempts are occurring before we get to crisis. I'm not going to read the list on there, but you can see a variety of different examples, and it's definitely not exhaustive. But once we've reached this crisis point, we may have seen a slow escalation from a student. We may have had cues that led us to implement different interventions to try to de-escalate that student before we get there. But once we get into a crisis, we're talking about a student that is engaging in such dangerous behaviors that sometimes it is unsafe to approach them. It might be because of physical aggressive acts, any number that I could list. It might be that they've gotten their hands on something that they are actually trying to attack a staff person or a student, a peer with. And all focus is on how do we respond safely in this moment. Sometimes a physical hold is appropriate, but sometimes those physical holds start to become dangerous for the staff involved. Students may start to engage in additional behaviors towards the staff that can lead to injury to the staff that are attempting to keep the student safe at that moment. And that is when really difficult decisions are made about, do we attempt seclusion in that moment? And something that was discussed, I think, previously around seclusion and some questions about the duration of procedures. Sometimes seclusion procedures are less than 30 seconds long, just to maintain, predict, or prevent a situation from becoming too dangerous and allow the staff the time to remove peers from the area, remove unnecessary staff, remove any dangerous items, and then the team is again continuing through this list of tools. Those emergencies are high intensity. They are not always long in duration, but seclusion is only one of the tools listed that we would go through and consider for some students. I'm being redundant a little bit with my colleagues who just talked a lot about what we would consider and make sure we would use best practices to make decisions about whether seclusion is appropriate in that moment. But like they said, in some situations, if we don't have enough options, we then are relying on calls to law enforcement in that crisis scenario. I'm talking a lot, Justin. You want to add anything? Great. Okay. I think the other question that we wanted, we were asked to address is sort of what happens after seclusion. And my colleagues previously talked about that. During seclusion, if seclusion is lasting 10 seconds or 5 minutes, there's never a break in the opportunity to communicate with the student. We can always see the student. If that student is verbal and wants to communicate verbally, individuals are available for that. If visual communication is more appropriate, that option is provided for the student as well, trying to make sure that that student is treated with dignity and they understand what is expected and why what is happening is happening. We would do the same thing in a physical hold if that was possible. We would make sure that the student understood, right now this is unsafe, we just need to create safety. But once the threat of harm is over, seclusion is over, just like the same scenario for a physical hold. And attempts are then continued to make sure the environment is safe. And what that looks like is different every single time. But the focus is on safety of the staff, safety of the student, and the dignity of that student in that moment. You want to add anything?
Did you address it?
Yeah, a little bit, yep, at the end. I think we're okay.
Yeah. I have nothing else to add to that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I apologize, I failed to introduce myself when I presented earlier. My name is Jenna Frenchgraf. I'm a behavior analyst with 916, and this is my 9th year in the district. Before we jump in, I just wanted to preface this. We felt that it was important to highlight some specific student examples. We were specifically asked about what it looks like for the high school population when using seclusion. We also wanted to incorporate an example from a younger student as well, just to highlight the behaviors, the level of intensity that is reached across age groups can be equal. And so we just want to highlight that in these examples. And I will turn it over to my colleague.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to explain the student A here, who is a very good example, or is an example of a student that in the 23-24 school year was in first grade, 24-25 school year was in second grade. So that was the year that seclusion was prohibited in that second year. So you can see in the 23-24 school year, we had very few restraints as well as seclusions. In the 24-25 school year, our restraint numbers increased dramatically. We did have a few seclusions, 2 of which, and I just wanted to highlight those 2 incidents. One of which was the case manager had been kicked in the head and received a severe concussion and was on the ground. So we had to, in that moment, seclude the student until we could get staff there that could maintain the safety of the student and the staff there. The other one was the staff were not present that had the level of training available to do that physical restraint that was needed at that time. In the second graph there, it highlights the average duration of the incidents. So that blue from year to year is just the total time of the escalation, not of the restrictive procedure used. You can see that the duration of that the incidents by year increased dramatically in this past school year, as well as the duration of our physical restraints. So like Adrian had mentioned, a lot of our seclusions and or restraints can be very short. They can be 5 seconds or less. Go ahead.
Representative Sensimura.
Thanks. Just to clarify, so the, like the left-hand column, is that minutes, like 0 to 50 minutes?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, on the second graph, yeah. Then just to provide some more context, I wanted to talk a little bit more about this student. The student's an elementary age student, small in stature. He's around 4 feet, around 60 pounds. I would think at general first glance, someone in the general public can look at him and be like, why would you ever have to restrain someone that size? And this is what we wanted to address in this. His educational category is EBD. He has some co-occurring diagnoses, ADHD, also other specified disruptive or impulsive control. He has a medical diagnosis of asthma, and he also, trauma history is likely given the family context and reported experiences from the family. For more family context, the parent is highly engaged. They advocate strongly for their child's safety and effectiveness of their interventions. This parent has also indicated a preference for seclusion over restraint, even at home, perceiving it as less physically harmful to their child and for others. The family has also reported some psychosocial stressors. Relationship between the family and our school had also been harmed at various times when either peers within the classroom were injured or her child was injured when we were attempting to block or move within a crisis situation by trying to avoid the use of a physical restraint. For student voice, when we talked with the student had reported experiencing or feeling as though physical blocking and restraint was actually us fighting with this student. You can see from that duration that we could perceive as though that it actually increased the duration of the incidences of his dysregulation as well. Our relationship with the student was also damaged frequently following these incidents. We worked very hard to regain the trust that we had with the student as well, but the perception of safety and trust during these interventions was limited. Due to his level of physical aggression and the intensity of his physical aggression, small stature, without the use of seclusion, we actually needed to use a supine restraint, which was using at times, which was required staff trained at a certain level of certification to hold the student down on the ground. So it was a safety risk for both staff and peers. Other considerations for that school year is that we had intensive tier 2 and tier 3 interventions in place for the student. Excuse me. We had our 916 consultation staff, 2 of which are sitting next to me here, also helping us. So myself as the building behavior analyst was working hard with the student. Cara and Jenna helped us as well as another specialist for the consult team. And we did a lot of work with the student. We reduced all expectations. His expectation was just safety and remaining in place while crisis situations were still happening. We eventually did, for a period of time, need to remove him from the classroom of peers. So we programmed him separately because of the rate of physical injuries that were happening to the other students in the classroom. So we needed to take the time to help the student re-regulate and be able to mend the relationships with the peers in the classroom that he was with, and be able to reintegrate the student back successfully with the peers. We had 2 staff with the student at all times. Again, with those reduced expectations, our expectations of staff was to increase our relationship building and to teach him social emotional lessons.
Before I move on to the next example, I think some of the contextual information that this highlights is that we don't take the use of any restrictive procedure lightly, especially with the population of students that we serve. And our staff care very, very deeply about our students. And there is a lot of thought, conversation, collaboration that goes into even considering using any of these procedures with students, along with what else do they need? What other skills can we support them in learning? We can move on to the next student. Thank you. The next student is an example of a high school student. A little bit of background on this student is that the student is about 6 feet tall, more adult size, I suppose I would say, receiving services under autism spectrum disorder, and the student speaks as their primary form of communication. Some additional context: prior to being enrolled in 916 programs, there was experience where the student engaged in physical aggression and then was sent home for the day. And so that behavior was a learned behavior of, when I want to go home, I use this as my tool for being able to go home. And so when the student became enrolled in 916, you can see in that 23-24 school year, there were a total just under 20 restraints for that student. And the student was only with us for 2.5 months of that school year. So that's something I want to point out. That's why there's an asterisk next to the 23-24 at the bottom on that graph. The following school year, we did see an increase in the number of seclusions and a small increase in the number of restraints. When I say restraint, that can look a lot of different ways. For this student in particular, it was transports. So they were transporting the student to a space where they could safely de-escalate. And so that's what that number is indicating there. I also want to point out on that first graph on the left that the total number of restraints looks very high. It's just under 60 for the entire school year. And during specific behavior incidents, we may use seclusion more than one time because we are really following the student's lead with their behavior as far as when that door becomes unlocked and then when it becomes locked again. So if the behavior, the student is showing that they're calming down and we unlock that door, try to shift into more de-escalation and reintegration strategies, and the behavior escalates and it necessitates an emergency procedure again, then we would relock that door. So this number highlights potentially multiple seclusions within one incident. So I just want to note that, and it's the same for the other student as well. Some other context for this student in particular, there was an open collaborative relationship between the family and school. There were likely some cultural differences that may have impacted school and family communication, and so that was an ongoing consideration that the team made. The family also experiences a lot of psychosocial stressors, and as far as student voice is concerned, when the student was demonstrating behaviors that indicated they were dysregulated, they would specifically tell staff, "Do not touch me. I don't want you to touch me." And so that's where staff tended to utilize seclusion as the tool during those emergency situations. Additional considerations for this student. The student had needs that were identified by the team, increasing tolerance for changes in routine or the environment, tolerance for just instructions, working on building some of those foundational skills to participate in classroom activities, and then also working on some social emotional learning, such as taking accountability for actions, especially given the student's age. This was another student where, due to the high number of restrictive procedures used, consultation was sought again, and that's kind of an ongoing rule that we have within our district. If a student has 10 or more restrictive procedures, an additional consultant, typically a behavior analyst from another program, comes in to provide additional support and strategies for that team and with that student. So they work together to update the student's individualized behavior plan to support that skill development, generalization of those skills, while also maintaining safety during any occurrence of physical aggression. With regard to the intensity of the physical aggression that they were seeing, there were injuries as a result of these, particularly head injuries for staff, but also for peers. So examples where, staff had concussions, bruises on their faces. There was a peer that had a severe bloody nose following an instance of physical aggression, and then another instance where the student picked another peer up by their hair. And so we're working on maintaining safety not only for staff, but also for the students that are in that classroom. And then looking at the graph on the right, those are just the average duration of incidents. And so another thing I want to highlight is that while the use of seclusion potentially increased, the actual average duration of those instances decreased dramatically over last school year. Anything else? Okay.
I can start. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about what happens after the use of seclusion or restrictive procedure. We use the word debrief in education a lot to cover a lot of different kind of things that we actually do. There's a statutory requirement to debrief every restrictive procedure that we do in every event that it occurs, but then there's also the thought around debriefing a situation in a couple different manners, such as after an event, we might check in with staff. During a crisis, you might be checking in with staff, checking in with students post-crisis. Obviously, the formal debrief, addressing if there's additional mental health supports for staff that are needed, additional mental health supports needed for students who are either witness or a part of a particular emergency situation that may or may not have led to use of restrictive procedures. Obviously, communication with caregivers, there are statutory requirements to, and there are 2 restrictive procedures within 30 days to meet as an IEP team. Having that option to meet as an IEP team post any sort of use of restrictive procedure in emergency situations is also another key part to collaborating and working with the families, caregivers, and teams. And let's see what else we got here. That covers a lot of what our debriefing process kind of looks like. It's like a really condensed nutshell kind of version, because this is not something we take lightly. There's a ton of consideration in how, when, who may approach these things with our staff, with our students. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, only that within that debriefing, a big focus, if you want to go to the next slide too, I just wanted to wrap it back around to this idea of visually, that crisis is this tiny little sliver in the middle, but a ton of work is happening on the right side of that. And it can be seen as a cycle. Of course, it has been clearly stated today that the complexity of our students is high, is great. It will take time for us to make the type of behavior change that was just reflected in Jenna's data. And we will have cycles, but by having a thorough debriefing process that includes the follow-up with the members of the team where it's critical, like what are we doing differently next time? Who needs to be involved with that? What is the parent side of this? How are they involved, and what words are they giving us to make sure that we're moving in the direction that's meaningful to them? That is a continuum that it just never stops. And I just wanted to make sure that we stress that it's again, the larger portion of what's going on the right side of a crisis, equal, if not greater to, than repeating back into the prevention side of it.
The 2 definitely inform one another. I think that's what we got.
Thank you for this presentation. Ms. McGlynn, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name in the beginning, but you said something during your presentation that really resonated with me, and that was that school is really the only place where we do not refuse services for students, and we welcome them back. And that was my experience too. with my son. I think I've shared my story. He was a student at 916 for most of his educational career. And during that time, school was the only place that welcomed him back. He was dismissed from after-school activities, before-school activities, karate, baseball, sports, camp. He had, we went through a revolving door cycle where he would take an EMS transport to the hospital, be out of crisis by the time he got here, be referred to an outpatient therapist who would then say, I'm sorry, I can't take him, he's too volatile, he has to go back. And we ping pong back and forth with the outpatient therapist basically firing us as a client, firing him as a client, and referring back to the ED who said, no, we don't, this isn't, he's not in enough crisis for an ED, we refer back. So he was not welcomed back by medical providers. It was a nightmare. And the only place that did welcome him back was the school and the amazing staff. Ms. Allery, you got emotional speaking about what you're left with as a tool for this particular wonderful student, wonderful human being who right now is having problems learning how to control his emotions and his behaviors. And I'm sure you see the phenomenal person that he is in there, because if you didn't, you guys wouldn't be doing this job. And I could see how much it hurts you to have to engage in ways to control a situation that is your last resort. And you guys also mentioned too, maybe not your last resort is calling the police. And we don't want that to happen either, because the last thing we want is a young man to now, because school can't keep everybody safe, involve law enforcement, and then it's out of our hands. And that happened to my kid too. So I want to thank you for sharing your powerful presentation, and I'm going to open it up for comments or questions from members of the working group. Ms. Heiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a quick question about the two student examples that you all gave. I just wondered what federal level setting they were in.
If anyone on the panel wants to take that.
We provide federal setting for services to our students.
Okay, so both of these students were in
Ms. Heiser.
level 4. Yeah, I'm sorry. An additional question.
Go
Thank you. Both of these were in level 4. Okay, thank you. I have one more, if it's all right, Madam Chair.
Ms. McGlynn, did you want to add something?
Just a clarifying point, Ms. Heiser, all of the students that we provide services for within our special education settings in both districts are studying for special education IEPs.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Heiser.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I want to thank you all so much. I'm a former teacher myself, and if you had told me as a teacher that I needed to go basically testify in front of a group like this, I would have been absolutely petrified. So I appreciate your all's very thoughtful presentation. And it really resonated with me when you broke down about your student. I have been there. I have had the tears on the way home from after the school day. And so I understand the psychological impact on our staff as well. And that's the heart of my question is, you had mentioned that there's training for staff on the psychological impact of the restrictive procedures on the students. And I really wanted to kind of take my hat off from one job and put my hat on from a former job, which was I worked defending school districts as a lawyer for 13 years. And so I'm generally on the side of the lawsuit where something has gone really wrong and we have staff with significant injuries, both physical and mental and emotional. So I'm wondering, what kind of training do staff get about their own psychological impact during the debriefing, and also training staff how to ensure that they are regulating themselves when they go into a situation like this?
Go ahead, Ms. McGlynn.
Thank you, Senator Seebecker. Ms. Heiser, so we actually provide comprehensive resources and trainings for our staff. It actually starts at onboarding. So the second you say yes to the job, we start working with you to ensure that we are providing you a continuum of care within trauma-informed practices. For our district, that includes a full day of trauma-informed practices led by myself and another mental health professional, looking for a variety of subjects through application of ethics and practice and how that supports students' understanding of relationships, all the way to dealing with staff burnout, secondary traumatic stress, and vicarious stress. One of the resources that we have implemented in our district is a comprehensive wellness plan utilizing the 8 domains of wellness from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. We optimize that model of practice and support for our staff, highlighting one of those 8 domains every month of the school year through staff professional development and different activities. Along with that, we seek to provide resources. So I often tell our staff that self-care can be weaponized. We saw that during the pandemic. That is my opinion. And organizations, when we believe in trauma-informed practices, have to do more than just talk about it. So as a district, we have sought to provide a continuum of resources for our staff, including hiring a critical incident debriefer that offers services and different offerings throughout our district. Jessica Dodge is available at all of our district schools at least twice a month. And then if there are any critical incidents, it's intentionally defined nebulously so that educators and leadership can say, we need you here. She is available to our staff. Along with that, myself as well as our mental health specialists provide staff mental health services that are short-term. We connect with our employee assistance program. We also provide resources through an agency called Care Solace. They operate as a care concierge in many ways, so working with your insurance to find the right provider for you. That's available to our students, anyone that they identify as family, our staff, and anyone we identify as family. And that is a free service. And then the last piece that we've just recently added, and I apologize for the beeping, that is my phone with the Raptor alert. The last area that we provide support in is utilizing currently a chat bot for mental health. It's called Alongside. So this is a recent development in the mental health world, and it's looking at low-level needs, or tier 1 that we look at in schools. We're not utilizing this with all students by any means. However, all staff are available to utilize Alongside as a supportive tool to problem solve, and it also can help them identify different resources and supports that they might be able to strengthen to support the resilience.
Thank you. Ms. Allery.
I just wanted to add, I think part of the question was who keeps staff responsible in the moment if staff are become dysregulated themselves, because we are all human as well. I know within my program, we worked diligently as a team, whether you were a paraprofessional or the principal manager, to be responsible for each other, to be able to give the feedback that, whether it's treats in the break lounge so that you could step out of the situation. We were each told and responsible to tag each other out when either ourselves, we noticed we were dysregulated, or we could tell someone else was either dysregulated themselves or the student was most upset with them at the time. We were trained to observe that and take each other out that way too within the moments.
Ms. Sandsmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation and sharing your experience. I spent quite a bit of time in and out of setting 3 and setting 4 classrooms as well, as a substitute teacher and as a, and just were in those classrooms a lot. So I really appreciate the work that you do, and I saw the work being done by the folks that I got to work alongside of, and the youth I got to work with. I am wondering, I'm seeing, there's been a kind of discussion about the correlation between seclusion or lack of seclusion options now and the use of restraints. And I'm looking at student A. I'm seeing the use of seclusion was about the same amount both years. So to me, that correlation doesn't seem to work the same way quite with student A, but are you implying that the use of physical restraints that look to be 170 plus restraints, that those would have been seclusions if this law wasn't the same? Is that the idea of this graph.
To anyone on the panel? Go ahead.
Sorry. Part of what I should have addressed in explaining that first graph too is in that 23-24 school year, he attended our school for only 4.5 months. So it was a partial school year. I don't have that comparison of the full school year and what could have or would have been with the numbers there.
That's really helpful.
Ms. Sandsworth?
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more question. Looking at the intensity of procedure, physical restraints, and I hear, the emergency procedures that are taking place and that versus police being called versus a seclusion. I'm wondering, are those truly the only options? I'm wondering if there's a discussion in here, and maybe it's something that we don't have yet, but I'm wondering what are the things that we could be talking about in place of all those?
Ms. Trzynski.
Trzynski, yes, thank you. We didn't go in great detail on that because I think the list, I feel like every year I'm in this job, I'm learning new things that we can try. And that list is extensive. One major thing that we do a lot is we provide students with significant amounts of space and time to try to de-escalate in that, because coming towards an escalated student feels very counterintuitive, correct? And so any number of strategies that involve allowing more space and using blocking and such these continue. The UCARU procedure was listed up there. It is an actual trained procedure that includes blocking strategies and space and de-escalation. Even without UCARU, those are strategies that are being used frequently, and it becomes the nature of our environments where we sometimes are not unable to do those types of strategies. Because every student is different, the verbal de-escalation strategies may not be working for this student, and we get very creative and individualized on what can work. I literally have a student that if we just distract him with an animal fact, but it has to be at the exact moment that can work for that student to de-escalate them and then give them the time and space to process and move on. So I think the list will be never ending in terms of things that we're willing to try. But I think that the completely ruling any of those things out feels very detrimental to safety of our students and our staff at this point. So I know that wasn't a very, this isn't something we're trying. I think the UCARU has been brought up already to this board, and I think that is the trendiest, I hate to call it trendy, but it's up and coming. It's the biggest strategy that's being pushed right now that can be an alternative. And so I think over time, as we're using that more, it'll be interesting to see the impact of having that specific trained procedure, but it doesn't change all of these maybe less specifically trained activities that we would do to prevent the use of seclusion or restraint in those crises.
Any other questions or comments from members of the working group? All right. I want to thank you all for coming and for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have about 10 minutes left for discussion. Any discussion or questions from the working group on anything that we've seen today?
Madam Chair, members, our next meeting, I believe, is, give me 1 second. I believe it's October 8th, 2 to 4 p.m. in this room. We're also looking at scheduling a site visit sometime in October to a school that uses seclusion. So yes, we'll be working with a school to add that on a date in September, or not, later in October.
Ms. Sandsberg.
Madam Chair, thank you. We also discussed in our last meeting that we would potentially be able to look at a site that didn't use seclusion as well. Will that be an option for a site visit as well?
I'll have staff take a look at that too and get whatever we can lined up.
Appreciate that.
All right, seeing no other questions, comments, or business. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Sandsberg.
Based on the presentations today. I'm just curious, has there been any follow-up on allowing any educators, also other educators, to come and speak to their experience emotionally after using seclusion? And I would love to hear from, if we've decided, if we're able to hear from youth that have been able to either formally speak to their experience being put into an emergency procedure like seclusion. Just curious about any movement on that front.
That is a part of the notes that we took when we were compiling all the topics that we, as a working group, wanted to cover during our meetings, and we'll be plugging that in as we kind of move through and see where we end up in terms of our meeting dates and times. Any other questions, comments? All right, there being no other business before the committee, we are, work group, we are adjourned.